Hello and welcome back to the EMEA Masters Finals of Spring. That's a new way of saying that I've decided now. It sounds cooler than just saying the Spring Finals. I'm still Medic, still Boxer and Jamada. Before we get into breaking down that last game, I want to remind you guys there is a Finals MVP this year. We're going to introduce it as a coronation of the EMEA Masters Finals. Why are we doing this? Well, we want to honor our players and talent alongside highlighting upcoming stars. The way that we'll do this is we'll have 3 players pre-selected. After that, the fans can each get a vote on Twitter, or as a collective, the fans get 1 vote on Twitter. Also, members of the EMEA, whoa, that is so hard to say. EMEA Masters team members can choose a player, which counts as 1 vote. And last but not least, the analysts get a vote as well. Once the finals and all the votes, finals are over and all the votes are counted, the finals MVP will be decided as follows. If one player has 2 or more of those total votes, they will be our finals MVP. If the vote ends up in a tie, the player who is voted for by our audience on Twitter will be our finals MVP. So you guys have a lot of say in the matter. Obviously, the finals are happening right now, and we've already seen what I think a lot of people would say was an MVP-worthy level performance from Venour. We'll get to him a little bit more as we go through this segment, because the start of the game seemed very Istanbul Wildcats favored, Boxer.
Yeah, like coming into this one, I think, you know, I didn't really know what to expect from Unicorns, but man, it was rough. I was pretty sure the game was over. I'm sure, you know, we all thought so at one point, because the Blitzcrank on Parus was amazing. He set up so many plays, and overall, Unicorns just didn't look like the better team. But then, eventually,
everything changed. But let's jump all the way back to the start. Let's have a quick talk about the draft, because there were a few things there that I think weren't quite as we expected. Honestly, the Galio getting through really surprised me. So as we bring up the pick order here, can you guys, Jamada, maybe talk me through a little bit about why you think this Galio wasn't picked?
Yeah, I mean,
why you do that? I'm just going to correct Fox's collar.
Oh, okay, no problem. Well, hey guys.
Excellent.
I mean, I think the biggest reason why Galio likely wasn't locked in here was generally just the lack of setup for the Galio pick, in terms of someone else going in, Galio going on top of that. Of course, Galio can be picked as a reactive lock, but in this case, it seems to me that Unicorns are just more interested in going for the slightly better lane matchup, right? Cassiopeia into Lissandra can be kind of rough for the Lissandra in the early phase. It's very hard to trade back that much damage if you expend the mana for the Twin Fans. So just going, all right, you know what? We've got a front-to-back team composition already. Let's make it even harder to dive with the Cassiopeia later on. It does yield a lot of early game presence like we've seen come out from the Galio, but it seems as if Unicorns are more interested in getting to the late game and punishing mistakes from Wildcats later on.
And it definitely worked out for them, although I think early in the game it really seemed like lacking this Galio, lacking a bit more of a frontline was going to cost them quite a bit, because so often it was Blitz really facilitating what Istanbul Wildcats wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you definitely run a certain risk being Unicorns and doing this, because early game hasn't been their strong point. Their early games have not been convincing. But at the same time, with the turbo scaling team comp, if they can survive the first 15 minutes and not be too far behind, they've already proven to us they're going to be in a great spot and they can easily come back. Now, of course, here we see Mr. Blitzcrank. That was his first base, by the way, running straight into mid lane, setting up the first play already. Worth noting that this was his first Blitzcrank game this entire year, and he still found so many openings for his team.
I think Blitz into Thresh is a really nice matchup for the Blitz as well, because Thresh roots himself whenever he's using his E or his Q, so it actually makes it a lot easier to land these hooks. But as you say, Parus was everywhere on the map. The fact that he could constantly find these picks, and whether it be on the Jinx or whether it be on anyone else, they were still able to pick up kills off the back of it.
Yeah, and let the first clip in this B-roll be a message to all support players. On your first reset, if you have the opportunity to open through mid, go mid lane. It's just the better thing to do more times than not. But yeah, Parus, for a first time this year, absolutely insane. And I think, like you said, the circumstances were just kind of there for it. There's a lot of things that you can remove from the equation if just one Blitzcrank hook lands, right? Jinx, Cassio, very high value naturally. But if you actually manage to hook away the Maokai, then all of a sudden the front line is gone. We won't talk about Venour because, you know, W bit
Venour,
broken.
yeah.
But, you know, all of those targets are very, very valuable to always snatch away and kill.
And that is one of the interesting things, because as soon as Venour was able to join up with the team, we really saw the Unicorns composition starting to come online. The Pathmaker, an incredibly broken ability with that Unstoppable, but Venour himself just incredibly broken on Cassante, it seems, Boxer.
Yeah, I don't know what Unicorns are paying this guy, but he needs a raise in either case, because this performance was so incredible. Like, if you had to give someone MVP right now, it would be Venour without a doubt, because his prowess in team fights, the way he was skirmishing was so impressive, and he didn't die this entire game. Like, they were so close to killing him so many times, but it was never actually possible.
Champ's broken, man. I mean, what can I say? Not only is it really strong, but generally, yeah, Venour just too many times where I feel like the damage was a bit too split from the Wildcats. A little more focused on, you know, taking down the Jinx, taking down the Cassiopeia, and whilst that makes sense, you can never really ignore K'Sante because the damage does ramp over time.
I think it's also really, really scary knowing that Unicorns looked so bad in the early game, but still came out so strong. And imagine what happens really in a game where they get an advantage. Like, how are Wildcats going to be able to keep up? Of course, you know, the team comp for Unicorns was definitely in their comfort zone, and, you know, they were able to excel on it pretty easily. But at the same time, there's only so many curveballs you can throw for them not to have a strong team comp.
And the team comp for Wildcats was in their comfort zone as well. They got the Xayah undefeated on it throughout the course of EMEA Masters, and it becomes very tricky to work around the flexibility that Venour has in the top lane. I'll bring you back to something both of you were talking about on the AD before we even got into the games, which was, I said, who's going to win this top lane matchup? Is it going to be Destroy? Who's this carry player? Is it going to be Venour? And you both presented me the idea that Venour doesn't need to win top. He can win the rest of the map by playing these tanks, by having that flexibility, and we see exactly why that works for Unicorns here.
Yeah, he's been doing it all tournament long, right? He's not necessarily, like, he's not a bad lane player, but it's not often that Unicorns give him the resources to, like, come out with massive leads. So he's either even or, like, slightly behind. But you see it here. This is why he's such a unit, to be honest with you. That's an LPL gold graph. I'm glad it's never really too far away from me, I guess. But yeah, I feel like realistically he's had so many games on the K'Sante as well that now it's probably something as Wildcats you're considering either taking yourself if you're Destroy, even though he's not shown much tendency to really lean on it, or in a second rotation you look to remove it away.
I wonder how Wildcats will change things up coming into the next game's draft. Obviously, we are going to get there in just a couple of moments, but if it were you, Broxer, what would you be looking at as the Wildcats coach or just as the Wildcats team to really start to upset the apple cart coming into game 2?
Well, they're going to be able to control the pace of the draft now, being on blue side. And Unicorns of Love also banned 3 junglers away. And, you know, they're not going to be able to do that on red side, I imagine. So potentially getting their hands on a stronger jungle pick like the Maokai, for example, would already set them off to a good start. They can look for, you know, a nice, well, I guess a nice bot lane duo, really. Because sure, they had a lot of success with the Blitzcrank, but the Thresh, the Jinx were also able to do work in the later stages. So ultimately, we just need to see Wildcats getting comfort, because in some ways this was comfort, but in some ways they changed it up pretty drastically and it just didn't work the way that they wanted it to.
Yeah, definitely didn't. What about for Unicorns, Jamada? Do you think they need to change anything, or do you just stick with your winning ways?
You know, comically enough, I think what I'd say for Unicorns is probably what I'd also say for Wildcats in this weird way, where I feel like Unicorns didn't really have enough. Well, I guess they had the Maokai, right? So that's obviously the form of engage that you kind of just throw out non-committal, see if, you know, you fish and see if it works. I think they can more or less lean on a very similar composition to what they have. I think they'll always thrive in these front-to-back compositions, and if they want to, you know, add Galio to the mix this time, they can make it this big body as well, like the big body composition, where sure, it might just be funky as your damage dealer, but you're always going to be able to, you know, basically have 2-3 bodyguards around them all of the time.
We are just getting ready to get on into the Champions Select. We'll see if any of those changes do happen. Obviously, it's best of 5. You can experiment a little bit in game 1, not mess things up too much and still be able to bounce back as the draft goes on. We see both our teams getting ready as well. I did learn from Sheepy earlier today that Mask, the Unicorns mid lane, is a big Hades player. Apparently they've been watching my VODs from my speedrunning days, so maybe that's the blessing they needed. They needed to see me bash my head against the wall in Asphodel for 5 hours at a time before...
Was this your way of saying that you want Unicorns to win because they have a Hades player?
That's how it works. Anyone that plays Hades is in my good books automatically, but we are just getting ready for the draft. Istanbul Wildcats on the blue side. Let's get into it as things start to kick off. Wonder if we'll see those jungle bans again, Boxer, or is it possibility from Unicorns? But we'll just have to wait and see as the Wildcats taking a bit of time to start things off here, Jamada.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think on, right? Now that you're moving over to blue side as well, just because generally you can get a little more targeted with those bans on the blue side, right? You've got a lot more freedom. They will open out with the Sejuani, which I feel like Peach has continually had pretty strong performances on, so I'm not really too surprised to see them strip away that option.
Yeah, and it was the first ban in the last series as well. Now here, if Unicorns is to continue down the same way, they're going to ban Wukong, they're going to ban Vi. The most recent ban we saw, yeah, the Rakan coming after Sejuani. So far, nothing too fancy happening. But again, this time Wildcats has blue side, so they can control the pace of the draft.
Yeah, and I feel like if Unicorns go towards another jungle ban, I think they've just generally identified that Elramir, a lot of the times in the early game, is the big pace setter in the early stages with picks that can get aggressive super early. So if we see the third one, I wouldn't be surprised. As for Wildcats, I wonder if they actually consider removing away one of the two hyper carries, right? The Jinx slash the Xayah, and kind of just go from there and see where it places Unicorns once it gets around to their rotation. There's the Xayah, so now it's like, okay, if you're Unicorns, you ban another jungler just to remove whatever might be left at that top tier, or do you remove away the Jinx? Of course, the Jace is also still there, and they had to remove that.
Annie's still up as well throughout the course of this draft, so we'll see if Wildcats decide the Annie is worth first pick prio here, Boxer.
Well, if I was them, I would probably be going for a Vi here. It's not really something that junglers played a lot, but it is objectively the strongest jungler that is available at the moment. Otherwise, looking for, a strong AD carry could be an opening, but Vi is just, an all-around good pick.
Yeah, I do feel like, however, Unicorns, seeing the Vi, would be quite happy to go the Galio on 3, I think. So depending on what their opening is here, they could very happily go towards the Jinx, knowing that it's probably the best on patch, right? Unless they want to go towards Zeri, feel like it's better at kind of, creating distance in terms of once the Vi actually ults onto you. I know we saw the Vi come in as that sort of Zeri counter as the point and click lockdown. I think either or works really well for them. Then they'll look to try and match the jungle. And then I feel like if the Galio lock looks good, they'll do it just because they know it's such a powerful defensive tool at dealing with the Vi.
Funky just performing on the Jinx right now. You see how strong he can be in later game team fights. Add in a bit of disengage, perhaps in the form of Gragas here for the Unicorns. It gives you a lot of flexibility going into the next stages of the draft. Of course, Gragas can be flexed to the jungle, although we usually see him top mid these days.
Ooh,
instead, it's the Lee. Okay.
That is something we'd like to see, of course. Like you said, Gragas would be,
of course we do, man.
would be the go-to for a lot of players, but Lee Sin into Vi is a very, very exciting matchup. Now, Lee can outperform the Vi, but he has to play very aggressive and find early openings, because otherwise Vi is just going to have more impact later in the team fights. Now, I'm curious to see if they're going to take the Aphelios and the Thresh away. Of course, Thresh generally is the best support alongside Jinx, but they could also look into something like a Tahm Kench if they wish to really protect her from Vi.
Yeah, they definitely could. I mean, it's either Tahm Kench's 2 support bans or an answer into the mid lane, and they're going to go towards the Lissandra. So now I think for Unicorns, they honestly have a bunch of freedom to remove away some of the Destroy champs if they want to, or if they feel like they want to take away, the Tahm Kench on their end, pick it on their first R4 pick, then they can start to remove away the other safety picks like they have now with the Thresh.
If you're Unicorns here, you're definitely going to want to set up a blind pick support, because versus Destroy, you're not going to want, to blind pick top lane. It doesn't make any sense. And we've already seen Venour on the Cassandra last game being so good at rounding out the team comp, setting up his team with the last pick. He can most certainly do that.
And he could still go Cassandra on 4 if you're confident in the top lane. I agree with you that support on 4 does make more sense. Tahm Kench getting taken away does remove some of that safety for Funky on the Jinx, but still things like the Braum available to him means that he has a lot of flexibility down towards that bottom side. With the Nautilus ban, kind of implies that Unicorns of Love don't want to go towards Braum, but we will see where they end up going on 4 with Wildcats having their final ban remaining.
And out of the supports, Unicorns have used so far this tournament, there's really only Leona and Braum left. None of the 2 can really peel that well for Jinx and team fights, so Funky is going to have to, prepare his dancing shoes going into this one. He's going to need clean movement. The fighting versus Vi and Ahri is already looking very difficult.
Yeah, I wonder if I mean, it's so difficult to blind pick Braum, because then at that point you're opening yourself up to just get Lulu on or just an enchanter, even if it's kind of fallen a little bit out of meta. So I wonder if they just kind of bite the bullet and say, you know what, it's probably going to be good for comp and we'll deal with the lane matchup. Going by the hover, it seems like that's what they're considering at the very least, but it's always going to be Braum or Leona. It just depends on what they want more. It seems like we will get the former. So now for Wildcats, you've got the opportunity to pick up something like the Lulu or an enchanter, something that can secure lane priority, or you can still pick up another form of engage to follow up on the Vi and on the Ahri.
It is worth noting that Parus was the main reason Wildcats got ahead last game, and if he locks in something like a Lulu, it's going to be way more difficult for him to have that early game impact. Out of the playmaking supports, Leona most likely is going to be the best option available for him, but he does decide to go for the scaling route.
Now, one thing I will say is that Wildcats, I'm pretty sure it was in the SK Prime series, they looked wildly, no pun intended, wildly different when Parus was on the Lulu, and generally it was a negative trend. I think the fact that he wasn't actually able to find players proactively because he's playing the Lulu, it really did limit their options. So I'm gonna very cautiously watch how they actually try and play in this early game. I think it's now gonna have to rely quite heavily on Elramir and on Kofte to actually find early pickups, especially around the level 6 mark. Destroy is gonna go towards the Kennen in the end. So now Venour has the opportunity to kind of go whatever he wants, right? You could see the Fiora come out. We could see even something like the Camille if he's really looking for extra lockdown. It really depends on what he wants in this matchup.
If I'm Unicorns of Love here, I think I would just, you know,
slap tank.
Yeah, bite the bullet, just take the annoyment to play attack.
Never mind.
They're going ham. In my head, it made more sense to just pick for comp here because it's going to be really hard for Jinx to, you know, team fight if not everyone plays around her. But of course, Venour has already shown us earlier in the tournament that he can easily be dominant on an Irelia on the side lane, TP in to help the team secure the wins in team fights, and that's what he's looking to do again.
Yeah, when Venour was last on this pick in semis, he just looked scary. There's no way to put it. Like, he was kind of quiet in the laning phase, but he got the win item, also known as the Blade of the Ruined King, and then from there, that was it. It was so difficult for the enemy team to lock him down. So I'm excited to see what Unicorns are going to do. I will say, in critique, which I've had throughout the entire knockout so far, they very rarely play around the top side, so I want to actually see them do that a little more proactively.
What I like here about Irelia is that we are having a Korean Lee Sin on our screen right now. Every lane is going to be volatile. There's opportunities to make plays all over the map. We need to keep an eye on this guy and his pathing because he has to shine in the early game. He's the one guy that has to set up Unicorns pre-minute 10.
Eyes on Peach in the early game for the Unicorns of Love. On the other side, Istanbul Wildcats, very much a team fight comp. Yep. You do have threat on that backline, you do have threat on Funky. The question is whether having this Lulu will negate some of their agency in the early game. Will Parus still be able to make those plays, or will Kofte and Elramir step up to do it? I believe our casters are almost ready for us to hand over to them. I'm just waiting for the signal, which you guys can't hear, but I can hear when it happens in my ear. And when they are ready, they say, "Hey, medic, it's time to go." They haven't said that yet, so I'm just going to keep talking for a little while as we build up to the Masters Finals. I think it's time for me to hand it over. Casters, take it away.
Thank you very much, medic. We are ready, waiting.
I wasn't ready. I didn't have the signal.
You know, Alex, sometimes... Yeah. Actually, I'm not going to end that sentence. That's probably not appropriate for broadcast. But what is appropriate for broadcast is Venour picking up his OTP pick from back in solo queue. He was a massive Irelia player. Phenomenal game one. And I know it's something you talk about in the LPL a lot, Al. The Kennen question. Venour's answer, Irelia.
Yeah, and we have seen a couple of different answers to that Kennen. We haven't really seen that much Irelia globally. It's a very feast or famine champion.
Yeah, it's kind of... Okay, I know they're both yordles, but hear me out. Irelia is
not a yordle?
No. I was about to call Gnar out. They're very similar in the way they
makes
like...
Makes a lot more sense, I'm sorry.
They're very similar with Kennen and Gnar, and Kennen are very similar on how they like to play the laning phase. They've got their poke, they bully, but mainly when Gnar is in mini form, and of course Kennen is very squishy, they play a little bit further back. Irelia now, of course, if you're very proficient on the champion, Venour used to be a main Irelia player, you find these windows where you can ult in and push out someone away from the laning phase instantly. Of course, we had Aragon on the desk for quarterfinals as well, and he talked to Venour and he told him that he was tuning into his stream to learn how to play Irelia as a professional player as well. So it's gone one south. Once it's gone well for Venour, he's played it twice in this tournament, and honestly, with Unicorns of Love being able to play the front to back, but also have the side lane pressure, it's going to give them this opening to choose how they want to play this game.
Yeah, so that's one side of things, where someone is playing something which is very on brand for them. It's not the same for Parus on Lulu. Parus has loved the hook supports, the things that can roam very early, and he did play one Lulu game against LDLC.
Didn't go well.
And it didn't really go that well, because he was often kind of first into the river as a poor little Lulu, couldn't really do much about it, and got picked off an awful lot. In this game, though, feels like even though it's not necessarily a Parus special, it works really well into this draft. If you over-engage as an Irelia, or you're sat there as a Braum, you're going to get polymorphed, you're going to get bullied down, and you can get peeled for as the team of Wildcats much more efficiently with this Lulu.
Also something that has become a little bit of a telltale here, Kofte, again, with the spellbook on the champion, he seems to be able to swap out his summoner spells so efficiently for his roam, for his teleports, for his team fights, and Mask this time that is playing the Lissandra has opted to go for the Ahri, a little bit more poke. How is that matchup working out?
So how it works now is that really Kofte can get some early lane push in, but this is very much about the first fight of the game. With Spellbook, Ahri, it always is, because you're either switching over to an Ignite in a lot of matchups, or in this one, obviously, the Cleanse. You'd be looking for one of those two things, look to get the first back kind of Dark Seal. It's one of the things that I love to do on it. And you're looking to kind of say, okay, you have the Lissandra Lee Sin, very good early game champions, but very snowbally champions in both directions. If they fall behind, they just get burst down, they get peeled for us, particularly in the likes of the Lulu into this late game. You're really waiting for the first fight of the game, the first ultimates of the game, and seeing how that Summoner Spellbook can affect it.
One thing we haven't talked about at all is the fact that the map has been split in half and Peach spot.
Flash for flash. Parus is being forced away, but Peach is over the wall. The ward hops in, and that ward is the hospital ward. Down goes Peach, first blood. Sorry, down goes Lulu to Peach for first blood.
Oh, and that's giving me a little bit deja vu of the last game as well. You're extremely squishy. Peach playing aggressive right there, trying to get down the HP bar of Bao, meaning he's not going to be as comfortable in the laning phase. And again, Play-Doh was on bot side. Lulu is extremely squishy. You can punish in the early game. You can technically take her flash. But right here, they take the flash, they take the HP bar as well, and they can rinse and repeat.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about, well, is Peach going to be in the mid jungle? No, it turns out your jungle is in another castle. It's in bot lane. And he really does a good job here in threatening the Wildcats bot lane, which was always going to get shoved early on. You have the Lulu versus the Braum. That is a pushing 2v2. They punish it so well.
I just think it's a little bit uncharacteristic from Wildcats, especially since the map was split. You know your vice towards the top side of the map, so where is the Lissandra? They're going to be towards the bottom side of the map. So I think it was a little bit uncharacteristic for Wildcats to not play the patience game, not wait for aid, if you will, from the team, and pushing the wave on their own, meaning that they got capitalized upon. And that kill, very crucially, also goes to the Lissandra. Lissandra does like to pick up the very early kills, just so he can get back and grab a little bit of AD and become that very strong fighter in the jungle. Especially when you're playing against the Vi, you want to be the stronger fighter on the map.
Yeah, and it's very, very snowball. You can see that Parus now having to walk into that fog of war. It's very dangerous as a Lulu. A quick note, Kofte's taken the dematerializers, had to take one onto a cannon under the tower there because he was afraid he was going to lose it under tower. Does mean that you're not going to get all of them onto the ranged minions, which can help you with some of that push a little later on. So when we come to that first play of the game, might also once again be Mask, as he has typically been on any champion, the first person to the play because he's winning his early lane.
Yep.
It's not a Galio, but in the same sort of way, you can get the shove and look to roam, turn up out of nowhere, cause a huge amount of playmaking to occur. And when you've got someone like Peach, who will be diving with you, can be very, very scary.
I do have to say though, Kofte did fantastically well on the Lissandra, but that was due to the fact that Kofte and Elramir shut down Mask from the very early game. They took down his flash, which meant that Kofte was the first one to walk into River first. Right now, Elramir, he doesn't really want to face Peach having a whip in his inventory. Also, the Lissandra lockdown is so hard for the Vi to play around, so I think Elramir is going to have to find other ways on his side lanes, whether it's bot lane or top side of the map. But bot lane, you don't really have any setup with the Lulu.
On the other side of things, though, on an individual level, though, Mask was still, what, 3,000 gold up sometime into the late game last game? He still made himself into a factor and was hugely important on the Cassiopeia late in the game went. Now, very early into the game, getting that early shove, using that area, which is a bit more lane bully poke, using that being able to hold down lane. Maybe that can help him reach these first fights of the games quicker. Just hit that level 6, has flash, has a chance to make a play.
Early Dragon being started by Peach, and the bot lane come up to support. You can see Elramir is in the area, but I don't know how much they're going to want to contest. They are going to start walking. 3v3 in the river potentially
Lissandra
available.
first in the river though. I don't think you want this.
So risky. Lekcyc will step forward. Here's the Braum, so difficult to walk through. Door goes up. Not required by the Eclipse. Onto Peach, has a ward up. Now Elramir is a little deep. Will maybe need to get over the wall, waiting for a Q. Steps forward, gets the witness fight. No flash. Parus goes down again. This Lulu is just not in. Over the wall with another ward hop. And Bao needs to be so afraid. Got a couple chakrams to work with. But even with that close range, whoa! Double kill to Peach. Who needs Mario? Peach does their own tricks.
Yeah, needs another one up to get out of that one. Bao hits the floor, and the consistent carry for the Wildcats is having an absolute nightmare in this early game, having so much pressure put onto his lane.
Again, very uncharacteristic. You know that Lissandra is walking into the river first. You know you're playing it into 3 versus 4. Now we're going to the replay again. Look at Mask. He's first in the river. He's zoning away Kofte. Your Ahri is a non-factor here. Plus your Lulu has no flash. Your Aphelios is very low on mana. And this Lissandra, we mentioned, he had the first back. He's got extra AD in his inventory. So he can take these fights with the squishes so easily. And here he will hit another Q very nicely down from Peach. Yes, he'll end up going down. But as you will see, the wave that's about to cross under tower, that Aphelios is not going to cash in. He's going to lose experience. He's going to lose gold. Tower plating is going to go over to Jinx. Funky has been set up for success this game.
You wondered there with Venour is looking for Vanguard's edge, but a well-timed stun prevents that option coming on through. As it stands now, it is the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition who have got the snowball begun in the early game. Well, not high on mana, so no real ability to make the dive happen, and we'll just go for the reset right now.
I have a question for you, Nana.
Yeah, what do you got for me?
How difficult is it to play Ahri from behind?
Now, for the next minute of play, while you have a cleanse, you feel okay. But now the
Safe-ish?
problem is, playing it behind against Lissandra, you can just about manage it, particularly if you survive through to, your first item. You can start wave clearing a bit more efficiently. You can kind of clear out the backline with 1 Q. That's what you're really waiting for, so you can safely get yourself gold. And
I'm waiting for the butt.
The butt is, League of Legends is not a 1v1 game, nor is mid lane. Now you've got a 3-kill Lee Sin. Anytime you slip up now, you die. You die horribly, even if you have a flash. Peach is going to close you down. I think that's going to be the real difficulty of the game from the Wildcats. You want to be ahead with the Vi and the Ahri. You're not going to have a chance to play through that.
And 3-kill Lee Sin is on the Herald off screen, which does leave a bit of time for Bao to pick up a plate in the bot side, but that feels like very much a consolation prize when you have a very nasty kill combo between Peach plus Lissandra, and a bot lane that's already got a few kills, or at least assists to their name. I need to see Wildcats stabilize, because his Herald snowball could get really problematic.
Honestly,
in
I
the next
do
minute or
prefer
so.
that they're keeping Aphelios down in the bot lane. Try to cash in as many tower platings as you can. You've got a call in your inventory as well. Try to farm it up and get there, because that Aphelios walking up into this river with no flash is going to be easy pickings for a Peach who almost has his entire mythic completed. So again, so much AD on this level 7 Lee Sin right now in the jungle. 1 level difference with Elramir. And it's not necessarily that Elramir has done anything wrong. It's just that... Exactly, 9-minute Gore Drinker. It just started by, your map is split. Wildcats overpushed that bot lane, and Elramir has had no say in the game at all.
And it really reminds me a little bit about what happened, not this last World's Gone, but maybe one before that, where we saw a lot of pushing bot lanes and stuff like Caitlyn, Lux's kind of come into the fruition as well. Hold into that thought a little bit, some things into that boss side river. Again, you see Kofte really not able to get out of lane so easily. As soon as he's out of lane, there's Lee Sin very nearby, but Peach, so good at punishing that pushing lane.
You've got an Ahri Vi. It was supposed to be them that was the pick combo instead Peach and Mask. 2 of these.
Look at these level
challenges,
differences.
right?
Both mid lane, 1 level up, jungle, 1 level up. You definitely don't want to fight them. I love the aggression coming in from the Unicorns of Love
There you go.
mid-jungle duo. They've got the extra level advantage. They've got the extra money. God Drinker, who's going to fight this Lee Sin right now? So they completely push Vi away from the jungle. Now, of course, Elramir has found his way down the bot side of the map to try and protect for his jungle that's for the bot lane that's just resetting.
Destroy needs to be a touch afraid. You can see what Venour is looking for, constantly stacking up that passive, but...
Whoa, sorry, something really important has happened.
Yes.
Peach has killed Toad. Peach has killed Toad on the bot side of the map.
Really?
He's on Gromp.
Guys, you and your movie references.
That's a video game one, but I'm very disappointed. There's a Slicing Maelstrom used by Destroyer to try and clear out the wave. He's in a bit of a difficult position here. Still up in the farm, just about, but here we go, into the mid lane. Mask used the claw the other way, overcome the rest of the Wildcats, trying to punish Mask, who does have the ultimate, uses it. Will Peach get his build to save? We'll have a safeguard available. Over the wall they go, that's the kick in! Rockets wide, Wildgrove keeps Elramir alive. That Gore Drinker onto 3, did some more AoE damage. Mask survives, it's only the ultimate that's popped.
I actually thought he was going to take that Q. You know, I have Katarina syndrome. You see dagger, you take dagger, you hit Q, you take Q. But right now, that was so detrimental for Wildcats. The fact that they got 2v3'd, Elramir tries to find anything on the map. And again, it's not his fault that it's gone so south. It's just that Peach has found the openings from splitting the map from level 1. Refill's going to go down. Platings are going to go down, and mind you, when the next Rift Herald spawns as well, with so much lead on Unicorns of Love, you bet they're going to go for that to completely open that mid lane. And once this mid lane is open, that means a lot of deprivation of a vision for Wildcats.
A reminder, this is the Vi that was left up that has been near enough in 100% presence across the entire tournament. You've got it with the Ahri, a very dominant mid-jungle pick
There's
option.
no Xayah.
No Xayah, and
Peach.
somehow Peach is around. Not going to find too much there as everyone turned at bot lane. I could probably just about finish the point, which is, look, you've got this incredible combo. You've got this incredible jungler, and Peach and Mask on the Lee Sin and this Lissandra are making it look pretty muted right now.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see why Elramir and crew have not picked the Vi at this tournament, really. They have banned it the grand majority of the games on blue side. They pick it as that first pick. It's a meta pick, but we talked about how maybe the Unicorns have gone towards champions which are a bit more in their wheelhouse, a bit more comfortable for them. Wildcats looking a little uncomfortable in this mid-jungle, and if you're playing that Ahri Vi, you got to get it rolling early. They failed to do that.
Yeah, and also you usually rely on Destroy, being ahead in lane. Guess what? He's not even 100 gold. He has not snowballed the way we have seen him snowball, getting solo kills, getting that Kennen to become a menace before he gets out of that laning phase. So honestly, if I was Elramir right here, I would have my sight set onto this Irelia. Try to get anyone...
No, we take it all back. You want a smite fight.
Yeah. Try to get anyone ahead on your map. The bot lane is not going to be the case. You don't have enough setup right there with the Lulu. Possibly try to take that Ahri towards the top side of the map, get that Kennen to become a beast, and we have seen what Destroy can do on the Kennen, especially in the team fights.
But we're going to have to see a bit more of what they can do, because I think right now we're getting into the verge of, particularly if Unicorns find themselves another play in their advantage, we're getting into a bit of a psychological battle, a bit of a mental battle. That first game...
And a gold battle as well.
Yeah. Gold battle's going to be in there, but when you come into the next couple of plays, you got to make sure you're mentally checked in as well. You know, Wildcats, I think a lot of people viewed this team in really high regards, coming in from the TCL, first seed as well. This team has so many fans behind it, so many expectations behind it, but to lose that first game in such a back and forth fashion where at the end of the day, you ended up getting outplayed, and second game falling behind now, they've got to find a way to dig deep.
On the other side, this is the Unicorns of Love, a team that has been historic within the European scene. And they were at things like the IEMs, pulling out Kale Jungle by Kikis and the likes. Absolute
what a time.
madness. And now all these years later, 7 championships in a row for their coach and Sheepy. They are looking for the first time for the Prime League, at least since 2020 summer, to turn up to the final, potentially for the first time since 2019 summer, to win the whole damn thing.
And they're looking impressive doing that, because I feel like their vision towards the bot side of the map, Elramir's jungle was constantly warded. There were 3 wards that just died in his jungle, which means they're going to spot him no matter what, coming to the bot side of the map. Jinx is always safe. Jinx has been set up for success. Jinx has 3 assists, call completed, Kraken completed, C's ready and set up for success. But the thing is, if you don't spot him in these 3 wards, he can only be towards the top side of the map, which means that Venour shoves in his wave, he crashes it in, and resets doesn't give. They just have not given a window of opportunity to Elramir to make any play top.
Yes, the process of elimination, vision, control that we saw kind of pioneered all those years ago in Season 4, Samsung, White, and Mata, they were the ones that really came through with that style. Now with Peach being such a powerful figure as well, if you don't know where Peach is, even as the Kennen, you need to be so careful. It feels like Lissandra is actually another sideline threat at this point. If you're a Kennen, you can get burst out by a Lissandra. He's going to be very far ahead. Of course, Lissandra, still an early game focus champion. We are getting to the point now where Peach can maybe get blunted if he goes too deep.
Still, though, it's 2 dragons, it's 2 heralds, and you've got Irelia with the item that Jomada called just the win item in the Blade of the Ruin King.
Check out Disrespect.
Yeah. You've got first item, Gore Drinker complete, a dive, and a herald available, Destroy. Maybe about to have his name turned against him here. There's a slicing Maelstrom, but the Vanguard's edge, the kick, the Q, and it is easy as you like. Superb combo in the top lane.
You're just 2 squishes, the Kennen to deal with a fairly sin on a side lane. Peach making use of it, but at least there is a cross map. At least there is some gold now going over to Bao on this Aphelios. We know how powerful Bao has been through his competition. That's something for the Wildcats. It's just paling in comparison to this Kennen falling out of the picture.
I was just about to say 700 gold now, advantage off the Irelia towards the top side of the map. Plus, when we're looking at Kennens, we're usually looking at counters of, yes, the Kennen can ult in, but how can you deal with that? Azir is one, Gragas Cask is the other, Listen is the third one. The second you see that Kennen ult in, you kick him back out, and once you use your Rocket Bell, once you use your Flash, there is no way back in for the Kennen. So not only have they considered shutting the Kennen down, but in the slight off chance that Destroy gets back up on his feet on that Kennen because a complete problem in the team fights, Peach will be there.
Eyes on the dragon. Of course, it would be so point for the Unicorns if they can secure it, but of course, with the play top side, it means they were a little late on some of those resets, and they did use some pretty key ultimates, so it's Wildcats are the first into the river. Unicorns are here in force to try and ensure that it still goes through. Is that another smite still? No, it was not.
I feel so bad for Elramir. Elramir has been hiding in so many bushes, just
I know.
looking at the jungle, just fading away from Peach.
First item complete for Destroy as well, who does have the teleport. Maybe this is the moment. Maybe this is the flank. They've got parity in items just about. Could be the last moment in this game if that's the case.
We are getting through to the point now where Kofte can actually start pushing in these waves on the sideline, has himself Mercury Treads and this Everfrost, so at least can deal with Mask in an individual advantage. Not going to be a great damage source though. You're asking the Kennen, who's also behind, to try and add in a little bit more, so it's not just Bao trying to be the damage profile for the Wildcats.
Look onto Pill, catch onto Peach, gonna be charmed, goes down! That's so much of your gold lead. He is eaten alive. and that'll be a massive pick up. They get the jungler before the soul point fight.
That was so great. And pulling him over there, coming in from Parus at the correct time, and he even flashes forward on the Lulu to make sure that that polymorph goes down, that Peach has no time of reaction. Of course, they're gonna lose their mid lane tower for that, but they stop the soul point from going over to Unicorns of Love. And honestly, the Black Cleaver being purchased first for Vi allows that Aphelios that bit more penetration on the target that Vi has targeted.
Yeah, so we already mentioned Lee Sin can be a viable target later into the game. Lee Sin, not the tankiest bloke.
If you face check.
And if you face check, it makes it even easier. You understand, feeling pretty good on the Lee Sin, had a great early game so far, but the Wildcats, talks about them at least, needs to be, they need to chill out, need to get in, not get inside their own heads, find the right plays. They find an important one there, take a dragon, take a shutdown as well, and they're on the board.
What did the kill go to, I wonder?
It went
Is it
to
Bao?
Paris.
To Paris, okay.
Slightly
You know what he deserved? He flashed forward for the ball.
That's very generous of you.
Of course, there would have been so many
That's
better...
the Lulu that sunk 1,000 ships.
Yeah. Of course, there would have been so many different targets that it would have been absolutely fantastic for. Bao being one of them. I think they rely heavily on this 200 years Aphelios to pop off in these later game fights. And I feel like here, Destroyer is not necessarily going to play the act of I am the secondary carry here. I think it's mostly going to be create space for that Aphelios to play the fights. Because if you look on the side of Unicorns of Love, they're pretty short range when it comes to these team fights. So if Aphelios has the right guns and the spacing from his team, I think he very easily do it.
Difficulty though, Destroy does not get to side lane this game. How do you do it into that kind of dive threat?
Incoming.
Maybe they can try and punish though. Flash Q from Elramir into the seats and the DC's on Peach. Surely a kick onto 3 gives him safe now. Venour can look to go around. The Vanguard's edge will mean he leads the charge. Parus wild growth, but it's just more to take down. He's cut down aside. Kofte goes gold, but surely nowhere to go. Under the tower goes Funky, and it's with style that the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition get a triple kill onto their AD carry.
And Venour does it again! This top laner, he's not been the main character in game 2, but that ultimate groups them all up, allows Peach some time to get to his second round of basic cooldowns, and Unicorns clean up house. This might just be the play that breaks the back of game 2.
Yeah, and I hope we see the replay again, because we set some parallels on what has to happen for a Wildcats to get back. Kennen creating space. Well, Kennen cannot create space if Kennen is dead. They've done such a great job at shutting him down. And even then, when Wildcats arrive, Bao needs to have the right guns to clean up a fight. He does not have the right guns here to clean up. They keep him at distance, and then it becomes a 4 versus 5, and Wildcats being down in gold, being down in items, they fall victim to the wallets.
Now, the thing is, you really don't have any kind of options available to the Aphelios there at that point. When Irelia is in melee range of you, it doesn't matter what you've got. Maybe a Severin ult could buy you a little bit of HP, but I mean, honestly, it feels like, you know, that Sentinel turret combo, that can give you range. It doesn't matter when they're melee of you.
Wits End second, plus Merc Treads. Destroy with his build in particular is never, ever safe. Towers mean nothing to this Irelia at this point.
Also, we mentioned how Unicorns of Love, if they want to fall to that part, they can play through their side lane split push. Right now, the only two who can split push from the side of Wildcats is Kofte on the Ahri and Destroy on the Kennen. Both AP damage dealers. Venour is perfectly equipped with so much magic resist to shred through the Kennen and the Ahri, so he's impossible to stop in a side lane 1v1.
Yeah, I mean, their current objective right now is survive in those side lanes. Not actually about finding advantages there. You're kind of sat there as Kofte, knowing at least you have Merc Treads, at least you have an Everfrost and that ultimate to keep you safe. You're not going to be a big damage threat, but you're not going to die too easily either. Now, the problem with that is they don't get to choose where Unicorns go into that side lane. Kennen will be the target of many of these attacks. It doesn't feel like the Wildcats have the vision or the men really to kind of call to arms on short enough time span.
Yeah, the problem with anybody who knows where that reference comes from is you lose that level in reach. That is just a how long can you survive, and a minute until what would be soul point again for the sides of Unicorns may well be the death knell. Can they hold on any longer? Can they turn this ship around? It is so difficult, as we said, for pick, the side laning. So hard for Wildcats to find a way through. Maybe a pick onto Max could do it. He's very far up. Will get rooted. Nowhere to go with the Glacial Claw. That means he will have to use the ult onto somebody else.
Very nice.
Will not find a way in. A big pick before the side of that
That's
Dragon's
what
Spawn.
they needed. If Destroy can actually make his way towards that Baron, it's a 4 versus 5. Maybe you can try, but look at the lane pressures. Mid lane, pushed by Funky. Bot lane, pressured by Venour. If you leave these 2 lanes, you're losing 2 towers. So even if you have Baron, the Baron can only stall you some time and farm you some waves, but Unicorns of Love would have taken 2 towers in advance.
We talked a lot about individual advantages about the place. Checking with the absolute gold lead, though, that's near enough. That's near enough 8,000 gold. 7.5. This is getting to be a problem across the board. And it's just, you know, you can talk about individual matchups. And we've talked about, hey, Venour's doing really well. Peach so far ahead in the jungle. I mean, Funky, imagine what he did, you know, what he did last game from behind the curve of the game. Now he's ahead as this Jinx. He's got that rapid fire cannon, which I know it's not necessarily the best damage, but allows that first auto attack to get on target more often. Once he gets to Infinity Edge, that short range is going to be somewhat mitigated by the fact that Funky's online.
And Wildcats keep getting more and more problems. When you start losing vision around the map, you usually use your beefiest member to try and face check and force some vision into dark areas. But now with the Dragon being up, with the Baron being up, Unicorns of Love can shift the pressure around the map however they will, because they are stronger on a straight top 5 versus 5. They're 8,000 gold ahead, which means they're going to be playing around trying to catch Wildcats off guard. And since Wildcats are so squishy, who face checks for vision?
It's so hard, and we've kind of seen this play out as well, where when you can play to both objectives, you pull people away from where the vision is.
Both rivers.
They've got both sides, so you don't even have to pull someone out of the vision, because it's vision everywhere for you. Peach will solo out this sole point, and I think probably wisely from Wildcats, they decide, look, we're going to have to play for the next track and give ourselves another 5 minutes. We delayed it a little bit with the pick onto Mask, and if you can get another item onto the Aphelios, Bao, such a consistent carry for this team, if you can just get another half item, a full completion, maybe, just maybe, you can win the fights you've been struggling with so far.
I just want to praise at this point Unicorns of Love for their patience and for how they have been turning games around. And in this particular one, they figured what the win condition is, splitting them up and potentially playing towards the top side that they split themselves, right? No, they played towards the bot side of the map. They got Funky up and ready, Peach onto that Listen. If that Listen doesn't do well in the early, it falls apart. It just becomes a kick that can also get negated. So props to Unicorns of Love for having a very clear early game both times. One, they didn't necessarily engage into their early game, but they brought it back to their win conditions, and now they're doing it again.
And it really does feel like this is another step in terms of improvement from this Prime League team. This team, of course, went to both EU Masters last year, now coming into EMEA Masters. They have gone a step further, again, with new players. They've rebuilt. And at this tournament, even though they came in as Prime League champions, first round robin in the first stage of groups, wasn't the best, folks. We saw Venour really struggle against LDLC and most of those.
Yeah,
and we even talked to Sheepy after the game and said, yeah, you know, we had a good draft, but we just had to calm down a little, understand our champions a little bit more. Every game this team has played, it feels like they've sorted out something else. They've gotten a little bit better at something. Coming into game 2, feels like a much more comprehensive game than game 1. Game 2's early game has really been a step up.
And now I really love what they're doing here, Unicorns of Love, with the vision. They're trying to force Wildcats to make a play because they're technically threatening Baron. Of course, they haven't taken the precaution of clearing out the vision off of Baron. So Wildcats knew 100% they're not there. Elramir?
Q trying to get in, but the Ring of Frost just holds them on ice. And it's looking like the ice of the morph. Destroy goes to the backside, but the Jungler's already dead. Vanguard dash onto the Vinx, onto the backline. Means Venour can continue to rip through them. Blade surging his way to what could be a game 2 victory. Kofte now must desperately Spirit Surge away. Flash as well. Cannot stand and fight against this Irelia. To the Baron they go. A prize earned from a fight in the mid lane.
Yeah, but the heart is the strongest muscle. Lekcyc on the Braum does so much work. It's just Destroy and a potential shuriken over the wall that could get a steal. It's going to be a miracle if that.
All the world on one Q. Just no way to make it happen. Now he's on the wrong side of the map. They know he's hearing Funky. He's excited. Needs to TP to safety. Cannot interrupt him. He's out. And nothing to be done.
Lekcyc will let you live another day. That Braum carried that last team fight, though. When we go into this replay, you see the flash Q come in from Elramir, and it looks great. And then Lekcyc presses E.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought it was going to be a fight that potentially could be turned around, because look at Bao's Inferno Moonlight Vigil. Gets everyone so low, but so low is not enough. They're not dead. And once Venour gets in the fight, isolates the Aphelios. Lulu is super squishy, cannot stay anywhere near this Irelia. So that almost killed everyone. Almost does not count in this particular game. And also, we didn't see this replay. Mask insta TPs down bot lane while his team is taking Baron. Tempo TP to shove in the way for pressure.
Can't use the Baron after to secure the turret, but it means that you saw Kofte had to go down, make sure that wave was shoved, and it gives a lot of time to get these shoves on. Oh, Destroy, you don't want to be there, my friend. But wait, the 4v1 Venour can do so much work. Wildcats comes through, CC'd in place, healing up so much. Finally, he goes down, but it takes 4 members and a hell of a lot of skills. All the while, the mid lane inhibitor turret is under siege. It falls, and the inhibitor sure to fall after.
Okay, you kill Venour, you get him down for the first time this game, but you don't have the vial. Now, that's the best you're going to get out of this. You lose yourself an inhibitor in that mid lane. Now you're going to have someone on call to keep those super minions down for the next 5 minutes. That'll be awkward enough for them. I mean, Unicorns, they still walk away with a pretty decent power play.
Yeah, but right here, it's 1 minute towards the next dragon. Look at all these deep wards. They have lane wards, they have top lane wards, they have bot side wards, they have river wards. There is complete darkness from the side of Wildcats when it comes to their own jungle, and how are they, with so many squishy members, going to walk into fog of war? That has been the biggest problem from the side of Wildcats with this particular composition, is that if you do lose control of the game, which it happens, do you have this beefy front line to try and get it back? Unicorns managed to do that because they had 3 tanks in the previous game. For Wildcats, it's so difficult.
You can see the damage graphs here. It's been pretty even, frankly, but it's not mattered. They've managed to win out in the important fights, get the might kills. They're up 11,000 gold. They've got a soul coming up in 20 seconds.
Yeah, and when Peach is positioning like that, it's a little bit dangerous. It does have a GA. That definitely helps, but if you lose that too cheaply, maybe that'll be the go signal for one of the first times this game from the Wildcats. You can see them trying to at least get these minions down in this mid lane. This is the bonus that you have from having that mid lane inhibitor down. Unicorns, though, they're not pressuring things. They're not making it too hasty. They're just sticking around this bot side of the map, making sure they don't get anywhere close to that dragon.
They don't have to. They're just going to force out the wave and then deep into fog of war. Who is going to face check again from Wildcats? You cannot. They're going to give away Infernal Soul for free and honestly pray that somehow Unicorns of Love, I don't know, their keyboards disconnect, Funky doesn't play the game, or something along these lines, because again, their front to back here is so much more superior than Wildcats.
It is an Elder flip, a Baron flip, or bust. You're already down 1 inhibitor, and now the Infernal Soul to boot. They are ready and raring to go. Fire and Fury. It's supposed to be Aphelios' deal, but 200 years just doesn't matter. When you're spending it all in the grave, it feels like Destroy falls down, Bow's still alive, but I don't know what he can do at this point. Another inhibitor falls in 4v5 as Parus. It's the wrong end of a rocket.
That Wild Growth has had some weed killer put on it. Unicorns pushing it to the base.
Gets a door put up in front of him, keeps him alive. Lekcyc continues to play bodyguard. The Moonlight Vigil comes through, but they've been diving in the moonlight. It feels like Parus goes down. The Infernal Soul causes burn after burn, and they are left as cinders, ash in the wind. Unicorns trample all over the Wildcats in game 2. They're up to a 0. They might be looking for a 3-0 in this series.
Traditions have been broken. Wildcats lose always the first game of a best-of series, but then they end up winning it all. Unicorns of Love are breaking this tradition. 2-0 up, turning on its head game 1, when Wildcats were so dominant in the early game, coming into game 2 on a side they didn't select with a very clear early game plan and also capitalizing on it.
That last bit is so very important. Unicorns didn't choose this side. They were the ones that won game 1. The loser chooses the game side after that point. Unicorns have won on red side in a meta where most people will agree that it is blue side centric. Now, of course, we thought that Wildcats on red side would have the extra factor of, hey, we've got a hell of a lot of top lane champions. Let's see what can happen with that. Though even that was reversed this game. It's the Irelia that came in, that last pick. So red side, Unicorns showing us an awful lot of stuff. And this organization, which has searched so long for EMEA Masters success, are on the brink of it now.
Honestly, I have to say that when it comes to Wildcats, they have to go back to the drawing board. Yes, the Lulu was a fantastic reply right there to Braum. It does facilitate for the Aphelios, but Parus not being on a roaming support, the impact that he had on game 1 with the Blitzcrank, pretty much freeing that mid-jungle duo of his team, it just didn't happen there. He got capitalized upon, killed on, and then he just couldn't roam. He couldn't get anywhere with Lulu. So again, go back to the drawing board, get Parus on a roaming support, and try to free your mid-jungle.
It was a game 2 after a game 1 that was so back and forth. It was just a stomp, wasn't it? First pick Vi doesn't work. The Lulu doesn't work, and Unicorns find themselves on the brink of a clean sweep in the EMEA Masters finals. But to break it down, we're off to the analyst desk. Medic, take it away.
Thank you very much, Initialize. Just one game between the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition and their title. Their EMEA Masters finalists at the moment could be EMEA Masters champions in just a couple of moments' time. It's a long time since the Prime League has sat atop the European throne, and we'll see if they can sit atop it once again today. But let's break down that last game. To kick us off, we'll get into the draft. We talked a lot in the draft about this Lulu pick and about how we thought perhaps it wasn't going to work for the Wildcats. Jamada, you in particular were a key proponent in perhaps Enchances is not the way we want to go.
I think just for Parus and the way that Wildcats want to operate, right, it just feels like they just need it. It's a bit of a crutch. They need Parus on engage. And I feel like this Braum blind pick from Unicorns was kind of a call out to it, you know? They removed away what was left of the engage pool. They left the Leona up, but realistically, do you want to play Leona into what you see here? I feel like, honestly, kind of no. So they say, all right, we feel like if you go Leona, you're just going to have a terrible time. If you go Lulu, we don't think you're going to achieve much. And it ended up being the latter, where it felt like Wildcats were very stripped for options in the early game. And then when it came to the team fights, there were a couple of times where, sure, there was a nice polymorph onto Peach, which enabled that one fight to stop the snowball. But outside of that, it felt like Wildcats were just completely defanged.
Yeah. And I think for a moment in draft, Wildcats kind of forgot what their win condition is. Because sure, it's about setting up Bao for success in Aphelios, but you know, him being strong doesn't really matter if his team can't set him up for success. And sure, eventually, in late game, Lulu can peel for him, but Parus has to roam, he has to be able to make plays. And in this particular game, into the Lee Sin, the Lissandra, there was just so much set up for Unicorns, and they couldn't deal with it at all.
And it did feel like that after we saw the Vi pick, perhaps Unicorns would struggle a little bit to find a jungler that really fit what they wanted to do. We said like this Lee Sin had to do stuff in the early game, and it really felt like Peach kind of took that to heart. Obviously, he's not listening to us, but like he really took the impetus upon himself to make those early game plays happen, Boxer.
Yeah, this is exactly what you need to do when playing Lee Sin in the current meta, because Vi is going to outscale you. You're on a huge timer. But if you can't find openings like this one, which is much easier with the support matchup, enemy having an enchanter, you having a roaming fresh, you can have such a big impact. And him showing up massively in a series where there's been countless jungle bans, just picking up, you know, Lee Sin randomly and destroying his opponents, like it's gonna make it impossible to draft against Unicorns in game 3.
You know, Vi might, you know, on the execution side, outscale Lee Sin, but do you know what can never get outscaled? A good lead kick. It's just how it works sometimes. And it felt like, sure, we didn't necessarily get to that point, but it felt like Peach was such an instrumental part to the early game that the scaling just never felt like it was ever going to matter in this kind of game and situation, because Wildcats, you know, they were kind of leaning on the pick. Outside of the pick, you have Bao Straw with the Lulu in his back pocket, but Unicorns got to a point where they were so far ahead that they could just remove the front line, well, what little front line there was from the equation, and they could just roll over the team fights.
Yeah, it's a few different ways to get an advantage in a game like this. You either put the enemy team so far behind that even though you're not massively ahead, they're really weak in comparison, or you get yourself a ton of kills like Peach did in the early game. So Funky was ahead because he had 3 assists and his enemy laner was really far behind, but Peach was so instrumental in the early game. We'll have a look at some of the fights that happened in the mid game as well, especially what was disastrous for the Wildcats in the bottom lane. You saw the engage coming out from the Unicorns. It looked for a moment like Wildcats would be able to collapse.
You'd hope so, right? Because they had the first move after the play had already come through, but unfortunately, again, another great kick from Peach, right? 3-man knock-up into the turnaround from Venour, and realistically, there was just no answer back that you could ever find as Wildcats in this situation.
And Wildcats just have such, you know, limited options when it comes to running down Unicorns of Love. They can easily kite back and re-engage, and Wildcats, they just don't have the same tools to do anything. It's all about the Aphelios. If he can hit, sure, everything is great, but sometimes it's difficult to lock down your opponents, and in this case we saw it. Unicorns run back slightly, and whenever they want to, they right-click in the other direction and just destroy Wildcats.
And it's definitely the power of Jinx in compositions like this, because all you need is a few low health bars, and then you get one reset, and you have this ability just to dodge in and out of a fight. A bit like Zeri, but with longer range and bigger rockets and more damage, you know? It just feels very easy for the Jinx to really set herself up. And in the concluding moments, you could see the Wildcats were really trying to find stuff. You get these great slicing Maelstrom, double flash away, Infernum with the Moonlight Vigil, tons of damage happening, but just not enough to actually start getting those kills.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can see in functionality what the comp is capable of doing, right? Aphelios will eventually have his big pop-off moments, especially when so many of the members of the Unicorns actually want to go in to actually get their damage off. But again, it gets to a point where it's a bit of a wallet diff, and if you're not necessarily, you know, being the initiator in a lot of these engages, you're going to find it tough to actually get, you know, the resets for Ahri going. And in this particular case, you go in, you die, all of a sudden you give in Jinx excited, and you give in Lissandra the throws as well for the turnaround.
I'm so curious to see how Wildcats actually decide to approach this final game, because it feels like they've already used up a lot of the stuff they had prepared coming into it. But ultimately, like, the one difference maker I can see right now is Parus. Yeah. Like, when they were at their best in the first game, it was Parus setting up every single play. The top matchups, jungle, mid, it doesn't really seem to matter. This guy needs to be on a playmaker, no matter what it takes. And then ideally we see Destroy actually stepping up top lane too, because he's been so strong up until this point. But Venour just, seems to be one step ahead.
And Venour's having an incredible series alongside Peach, who was our probably highlight player of that last game. And whenever someone pops off on Lee Sin, it's always a joy to behold. And Peach really used the early game advantages that he had gained to really shut down any hopes that the Wildcats had. I do wonder how you keep someone like him down. Like 1.5k gold lead at 15 is, 14 in fact, is absurd. And when you ban out so many junglers and he still can go to this Lee Sin, it becomes a big worry for the Wildcats.
You know what? Maybe you take up Unicorn strategy. You ban away 3 junglers like Unicorns might in game number 3, and then just pick up the best thing. I don't know. It's really rough.
We're going to see Lilia Kane jungle matchup.
Like just nonsense champions. I mean, yeah, it's really rough, because it seems that Peach's champion pool is just very, very deep, right? And to be able to come out into a situation where you're forced onto Lee, I mean, it's not like Lee's a bad champion per se on this patch anyway, but to be able to pull off that kind of performance under the circumstances, it's scary. And I think the only thing you can really look to do is maybe remove away lane setup, because that's the only thing really that Peach could, utilize around having the Lee Sin.
Yeah, I think that's really what it's about. I don't think they can actually shut down Peach from a ban perspective. Like, they can ban 10 junglers. I'm sure he's going to find something that's going to work. In terms of mid lane, like stuff like Lissandra, Rise helps Lee massively, setting up plays. Braum doesn't, really strike us as a strong early game champion, but even he is really strong when it comes to setting up ganks. So just don't give them any setup. And again, Parus, no pressure, but we need to see a big carry performance here.
I think very quickly, first 3, they have to lock in support. I don't think they can, like, for the rest of the series, I think if this is one thing that they should have learned here, is that they can never allow support to go to 4-5, otherwise they're just going to end up in this situation again.
I agree, it's all on the line for the Wildcats. 1 game away from being eliminated, and 1 game away for the Unicorns of Love from claiming their EMEA Masters title. We'll be back after this.